I'm Carol Stewart. I'm the founder of the Bounding Solutions and author of Quietly Visible, Leading with Influence and Impact as an Introverted Woman. I also host the Quietly Visible podcast. I'm an executive career leadership coach, and I specialize in coaching introverted women who are senior leaders. And I coach women to overcome the barriers to their leadership success, to overcome things like imposter syndrome, self-doubt, and to raise their visibility and profile so that they lead with confidence, influence, and impact. And I also work with organisations and help them to develop their talent and provide a range of workshops, webinars, and training as well.
So I've got to ask you, we've known each other for a couple of years now, but for everyone else out there and listening, I'd love to hear why introversion, because when it comes to executive coaching and career coaching, there's such a breadth of different things to focus on and help people with. So why introversion and why introverted women?
Right. So it's because I'm an introvert myself. And I remember back in my leadership days, prior to starting my coaching business, I would always felt as if, there was something wrong. You need to promote yourself more in meetings, that sort of thing, which didn't come naturally to me, because I just thought, well, I've got something important to say. I'll say it when I have something to say, not just speak for the sake of it. And back then I didn't really understand a lot about introversion to what I do now. And I remember we did the Myers-Briggs test as an area leadership. And when I got my results, it came out as an ISTJ. And I thought, because there's so much negative connotations that was associated with introversion, I didn't really want to own that. And I remember I kept re-adding my scores up to see if I'd made a mistake. So I thought I didn't want to own that. And then after I left employment 10 years ago, and I did a master's in coaching psychology whilst I started my coaching business. And I started I looked more into the work of Carl Jung on introversion, extroversion, and I got a better understanding of what introversion was. And it helped me to understand myself a lot better as well. But I still hadn't specialised in coaching introverted women then. And it was a few years later that I was reflecting on who I'd worked with and the clients that I worked with. At the time I was coaching sort of all women. I mean, I still do coach all women, but I didn't have that speciality. And I noticed a pattern that the majority of them were introverted. And I thought, that's interesting, because I'm introverted myself. And then I started writing about the challenges that introverted women leaders face. And I started getting bombarded with messages, comments, people sending me emails about the challenges that they had experienced as introverted women and their leadership journey. And this really opened my eyes to the extent of how much bias there is against introversion in the workplace. And so that's why I decided to make it my area of speciality. I was a bit reluctant to at first, because I thought narrowing down in that way then means that there's so many other people that, I'm going to miss out on in terms of supporting. But it actually helped me a lot in my business, because it helped me to raise my profile more. And I still do get extroverted women, and I still get men as well who come to me for coaching. But it means that having this area speciality means that I can go deeper into this subject area as well.
So it's interesting, you said about the challenges. So you were sharing your challenges as an introverted woman, and then that led other people, flooding your inbox, so sharing their experience as well. So what are the top challenges of introverts? Because I mean, I would say class myself. Do you know what? Actually, I feel like I've completely changed during the pandemic. So I used to sit on an extroverted side, I think, especially in my 20s. And I don't know whether it's just growing or a change in dynamic, but I would probably then class myself as ambivert, it's funny because I sit on one of the weird diagonals of a disc profile, which is that I have a high I, but equally I'm reserved and on a C as well, so quite analytical. which is quite a rare combo. And so I feel like I always need a balance. And I wonder if sometimes I don't see things for other people, such as like full introverts, if I'm missing out. So what kind of challenges are there?
So I'd say one of the biggest challenges in the workplace is speaking up in meetings. That tends to be quite a big challenge. And the reason for that is because of the way that most meetings are conducted. Introverts typically like to think, process their thoughts and reflect and then speak, whereas extroverts typically they will speak and they'll be processing their thoughts as they're speaking. And the way that meetings are conducted, people get put on the spot and then asked to give a response straight away. So someone who is extroverted, can start speaking, and so even though they may not have got to their point, they may appear more engaged, more confident, whereas someone who is introverted, get put them on the spot, then that can be kind of awkward for them, because they're not necessarily have that time to process what they want to say and then say it. And so that does tend to be a big challenge. And then also what happens is, because they know that they're going to be put on the spot in that way, it then triggers that anxiety about, oh gosh, you have to speak up in a meeting, which then brings in a whole host of other issues as well.
Is it like that element at the end of an interview when someone says, and do you have any questions for me? And you're going, oh gosh, have I prepared the most interesting and provocative questions to get me noticed? And it's less about the answer and more, am I going to say the right things so that they think I'm thinking, or I can show my workings? And that panic, is it kind of like that in a sense?
Not quite. It's more the case that because they know that people are going to be expecting them to give a response, when they don't necessarily give their best responses without having had that time to think. So in a way, kind of like what you're saying, but knowing that they haven't had time to think about what they want to say, so they can stumble their words, or they may not necessarily, they may let the moment pass and not speak up as well. And a good chair or facilitator of the meeting will recognize that different people have different thinking styles, and so will allow for that as well. But unfortunately, a lot of meetings, a lot of chairs and facilitators don't necessarily have that awareness. And there are things that people who are introverted can do to put themselves in the best position when they go into meetings. And likewise, people who are holding meetings can make them more conducive to people who are introverted being able to be at their best. So things like sending out the agendas in advance, and someone being able to go through an agenda in advance and think about the items on the agenda, what their thoughts are, so that when they go into the meeting, they've done a lot of their thinking beforehand. It makes it easier for them to then speak up on the spot. And also, when holding a meeting, recognizing that some people need time to think, so allowing for that as well. There are some organisations who are becoming very aware of this and are sort of changing the way that they conduct meetings. There are some who will prepare a briefing that everybody has to read at the beginning of the meeting, and everybody gets the time to read it, and then they will have a discussion about it. So there are different ways in which they can be made more accommodating.
I can imagine that the challenge, and because I have this as well, it's about helping people recognize how they can get the best out of other personalities and thinking styles but in league with their own. So it's kind of like a mix and match process, right? I see that I am an extrovert, therefore, but this person just is going to need more time and time, which is, it's funny. I actually said this, I had it this week in a meeting. Someone went, Alex, what are your thoughts? And I went, I'm processing, can you give me a second? And because I was having to explore in my thoughts before I revealed what my recommendations were in that session.
So, and just something like that is, a great way for someone to let people know, well, yes, I have something to say, but I'm processing my thoughts.
But it's also, I imagine though, the confidence to actually speak up and say that and claim that time and space, would you say?
And that is the thing that, you know, a lot of people don't necessarily have that confidence to do that, because it's, you know, it then kind of puts them on the spot. It makes them then become the focus of attention, and, you know, they might not necessarily want that people are going to think, oh, because not everybody has that awareness, and because of the misconceptions as well that exist around introversion, people may not necessarily think, well, you know, that is just that person's way of processing information.
What you say about the misconceptions of introversion. Now, I think some of us, and I know certainly when I talk about communication and things like that, people have a very set idea and a very individual idea about being an introvert. And in fact, even you yourself said, I wasn't ready to own that label, this name as an introvert. So what are the common misconceptions about introversion?
But before I wrote my book, and this was what led to writing my book, I was out networking one day. I spoke to a woman. I told her I was introverted, and she said to me, oh, you don't look like an introvert. And I thought to myself, well, what on earth is an introvert supposed to look like? And I thought, is it because I'm networking? And she thinks that introverts don't network. Is it because I had a bright orange top on? And she's thinking, no, that's a bit loud for someone who's introverted. And so I put the question out on social media, and I said, when you think of the word introvert, what comes to mind? And I got responses such as shy, lacks confidence, social misfit, aloof, and all of them, much more. And that just highlighted to me the extent of the misconceptions around introversion. People think that because someone is introverted, and I'm generalizing here because not everybody thinks this, but a lot of people think that because someone's introverted, they're shy, they lack confidence, they don't like public speaking, they're social misfits. But these could apply to people who are extroverted as well. And that highlighted to me the extent of the misconceptions around introversion. And oftentimes these misconceptions can shape the way that someone who is introverted sees themselves. So I often have clients who experience self-doubt and imposter syndrome, which a lot of it is as a result of their early childhood experiences where they were made to feel that they were not good enough because they were introverted. So it could be that their parents or their carers kept telling them, oh, you need to go out there more, you need to speak up more. And then as they've grown, those messages have been reinforced. And so now as adults, it has led to self-doubt. And because we live in what Susan Cain, who's the author of Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking, she terms the extrovert ideal. And this is a widely held belief that the ideal self is alpha, gregarious, and comfortable being in the spotlight, which is something which, you know, attributes serve extroversion. And historically, I think that particularly here in the UK and in the US and many parts of the West, that's being held up as what good leaders are.
I was going to say, it's not just in the workplace or in life, it's also leadership, like to be a leader. Leadership skills are about being that presence, that person. But what over the people you've worked with, and indeed yourself as well, what are some real strengths of introversion for leadership? Listening.
Introverts are said to be good listeners, and listening is a key part of our communication, and a lot of leaders unfortunately don't listen. Empathy, developing empathy, that not necessarily that being able to think and reflect as well, those are good qualities which often are overlooked, because sometimes, and I often have introverted clients who have said, oh, you know, they look at their colleagues, extroverted colleagues in meetings and think, oh, gosh, they could be like that they speak on the spot. And then so I say to them, well, when your colleagues are speaking on the spot, what are they actually saying? And then they think about it and they think, well, sometimes what they're saying, there's no substance in what they're saying. Whereas with them, they will think and reflect on something, and then they will come with something quite profound, or it's something which is very substantive. So that quick decisions aren't always the best decisions, as I say. And sometimes you do need to have that thought and reflection, that thoughtfulness is put into decision making. I mean, of course, in a crisis scenario, you do need to be able to make quick decisions, and people who are introverted need to be able to adapt their leadership style in order to get the best outcome. just like people who are extroverted or ambiverted need to do as well.
So I always think it's about finding your own way, like to self-prepare for those situations. So if you had a variety of situations, as you say, like crisis, like, right, what's my kind of what's my go-to process to be able to handle this? Or what do I need to let people know? I don't know if that resonates with you in terms of how that helps with the situation, to go, right, actually now I can't have that time to think and process, or I have limited time to think and process.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that scenario?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I do in my I sort of say to people who are introverted leaders, that, you know, when it comes to sort of their decision-making style, to think of possible crisis scenarios in advance and think about how they would respond to them, or the best way to respond to them, so that, you know, when they are in a crisis scenario, that, you know, they've thought about what they need to do beforehand. And also, you know, they're very knowledgeable about their fields of work and their areas of expertise. So it's about also listening to their gut instincts, what are their initial instincts telling them as well. And then also getting the advice of other people as well, so that they're getting a rounded view, and then they make their decision.
Interested in your story as well, because you said you'd done your Myers-Briggs, you'd had this struggle with claiming your own name as an introvert. So what helped you really step into this confident, orange top wearing public? What did it do for you, and how did you do that?
It was liberating once I understood that, you know, what introversion was, what it actually was, that there were these misconceptions that we are in this what's called an extrovert ideal, which is not necessarily the best. Just being able to have that confidence to be who I am and be my authentic self was liberating.
What did it do for you career-wise? Because this is the thing as well, is that when we live with the extrovert ideal, especially with leadership, it's not just that doing the work well, in a sense, it can have an effect over someone's whole career journey. So what was the impact? So,
you know, fortunately or unfortunately, depending how you want to look at it, when I was employed as a leader, I hadn't got to that place yet. So I had recognized that I was quiet and accepted that I was quiet and confident, but I hadn't fully owned introversion. And so it was, like I said, once I did the Masters in Coaching Psychology and looked more into what introversion was and the work of Carl Jung, that I really fully owned it, and I became introvert and proud.
Oh, fantastic. Like, and because, I mean, for anyone, if you're listening to this or watching this later back, Carol has a huge presence on LinkedIn and following. It's incredible. So clearly, you know, you've really stepped into who you are, and it's really inspiring to watch you and stand out. And I've seen like the photos of the big public speaking and talks you've done and things like that. So you put yourself out there as well, and I can imagine that's incredibly valuable for your clients to know that and see that as well. I'm aware that we're coming to the end of our chat, which is always sad. So I'm just wondering, what are the top tips that you'd give for someone who is either struggling with taking ownership of that introvert label, or can help themselves step towards that empowerment as well?
Right. So I would say that introversion is not something that you have to get over, or it's something that you need to recover from. Understand what introversion is. It's a preference as to how we interact and engage with the world. And, you know, introversion, extroversion exist along a continuum, and we all have a preference as to where we fit along there. Different environments and different situations will determine where we have a preference for. And so it's about understanding yourself and understanding those environments where you thrive in and those environments where you are drained of energy. Because oftentimes what happens is, if you're in environments which are externally stimulating, there's a lot of external stimulation going on, that can be quite draining. So things like meetings, networking, social environments where there's a lot of external activities going on, that can be draining. So it's about understanding that when you're in certain environments, you may find that your energy is drained. As a result of your energy being drained, you may not necessarily feel like engaging and being sort of on tap, so to speak. And so it's recognizing that, so that you can put yourself in the best position beforehand, make sure that you're re-energized, that you're recharged before you go into those environments. And then after, practicing self-care, so that you know that you are getting that time to go inwards and to recharge. So don't put back-to-back meetings on, because those are energy drainers for someone who's introverted. And if you've got a day of back-to-back meetings, by the end you'll probably feel totally frazzled. And if you have been led to believe that because of introversion that you're not necessarily as good as, you know, the people that are extroverted, look at your beliefs about yourself and challenge them, and change how you think, what you think and believe about yourself. Because if you can do that, that will help to change how you feel as well.
That's fantastic. I love that resonates with me perfectly, because I do flip between getting very energized by, like, if I was out doing a training live, and back when it was live and in person, I'd be like, yes, go, be super energized. But I'd always need space at the end of the day, or if I was speaking at a I got to the point where I was like, I know I can't meet you at that point, because I'm not going to be on good form. So I'd block out a part of my diary, or actually really look forward to the train home or the drive home, because it'd just be quiet and time not to, not on emails, not checking anything, just pure closing my eyes even as I say it, which is just I need to reset. It's like a recharge. I need to recharge.
And that's it, is knowing when to recharge. And another thing that I would say is about knowing how to adapt to different situations. And when I say adapt, it's not changing who you are, but it's recognizing that in certain environments, in order to get the best outcome, you may have to be a bit more talkative, or speak to people more, or do things that don't necessarily come naturally to you. But as if you're a leader, then that's what leadership is about being able to adapt to the different situations. So it's not changing who you are, but it's learning how to adapt to situations so that you can get the best outcome. And it's developing your emotional intelligence as well, so that you have that self-awareness about how your behavior is impacting others, and why other people's behavior may be impacting you as well.
That's fantastic, and so on point. In fact, it's a great point to wrap up there, in terms of a wonderful lesson for everyone, I think, as well, regardless actually of how you identify, is really taking ownership so that you can have the best outcomes. Well, thank you so much for all of that. Now, I'm wondering, where can we find more of you?
So if you go to my website, aboundingsolutions.com, you'll be able to access my podcast through there. I have a free assessment on there, confidence, influence and impact assessment, which will give you ideas about areas that you can focus on if you need to increase your confidence, influence and impact. And connect with me on LinkedIn, Carol Stewart. I'm on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. And I'll make sure that I've popped all of those as well in the links there for you, so that so you guys out there can find the details there. Otherwise, thanks so much, Carol, for joining us.
Thank you, Alex. It's been a pleasure.